Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Depictions Media Radio. Of course, I'm your host, Michael Clogs, and in this next recording, where it is the UN Security Council, and they're getting a briefing on the Middle East and on Syria, and it's part of the argument. The topic of U.S. involvement and how it has affected the Middle East in general, of course, with the war on terrorism, and especially Iran agrees that there is a war on terrorism, but where we seem to part ways is that how that war on terrorism is being used to affect economies and governments with sanctions and in other things to possibly tear down a government or governments in the Middle East. Iran, the representative from Iran named the United States at the top of that list. But if we take a look at consumerism versus the oil and gas industry, and just something as simple as some of the products that we actually buy that are covertly supplied via oil and gas because they need the gasoline to make the fibers or to make the plastic resins, things like that it may actually color some of what it is that they're actually talking about with how American consumerism could have a effect, and how the Western governments could use that same effect to tear at governments in the Middle East. So, just a point of view from the other side. Of course, there hasn't been a lot of rest and peace in the Middle East in decades, and it is a serious problem, and one that needs to be addressed, and probably should be addressed by not pointing fingers at different governments, but actually sitting down at a table and trying to figure out the best plan for everybody to simply get along in a peaceful manner. So let's listen to the UN Security Council. I would suggest sitting back and relaxing to listen to some of the arguments that are actually made, both from the Western side and both from the Eastern side of the coin, about rest and peace in the Middle East and the problems that they are seeing in Syria with trying to form a government and a stable and sovereign government.
The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in the Middle East. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of the Syrian Arab Republic, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and of Turkey to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to the document S/2022/727, a letter dated 30 September 2022 from the Secretary General addressed to the President of the Security Council. I now give the floor to Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, I thank Council members for the opportunity to brief you on the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2118 on the elimination of the chemical weapons program of the Syrian Arab Republic. Since the last consideration of this matter by the Council, and consistent with established practice, the Office for Disarmament Affairs has been in regular contact with its counterpart at the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, on its activities related to this matter. Yesterday, on 24th of October 2022, I held a monthly call with the OPCW Director General to receive an update on developments and ascertain his views. Mr. President, efforts by the OPCW Declaration Assessment Team, or DAT, to clarify all the outstanding issues regarding the initial declaration and subsequent declarations of the Syrian Arab Republic have not progressed since the Council last met on this issue. Unfortunately, all efforts by the OPCW Technical Secretariat to organize the 25th round of consultations between the DAT and the Syrian National Authority continue to be unsuccessful. As Council members were previously informed, the OPCW Technical Secretariat has provided the Syrian Arab Republic with a list of pending declarations and other documents requested by the DAT since 2019, with the aim of assisting the Syrian Arab Republic in resolving the 20 outstanding issues. Mr. President, as has been stressed on a monthly basis for many years now, due to the identified gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies that remain unresolved, the Technical Secretariat continues to assess that, at this stage, the declaration submitted by the Syrian Arab Republic cannot be considered accurate and complete in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention. The OPCW Technical Secretariat remains fully committed to ensuring the complete implementation by the Syrian Arab Republic of all its declaration requirements and to assisting Syria in fulfilling its obligations under the Convention, OPCW policymaking organs' decisions, and Security Council Resolution 2118. I take this opportunity to reiterate my support for the integrity, professionalism, impartiality, objectivity, and independence of the work of the OPCW. Mr. President, I have been informed that the outcome of the 9th round of inspections of the Barza and Jamraya facilities of the Scientific Studies and Research Center, or SSRC, conducted by the OPCW Technical Secretariat from 11 to 18 September 2022, will be reported in due course. With regard to the detection of a Schedule II chemical at these facilities in November 2018, I regret to inform the Council that the Syrian Arab Republic has yet to provide sufficient technical information or explanations that would enable the OPCW Technical Secretariat to close this issue. I have been advised that the OPCW Technical Secretariat has not yet received the requested information from the Syrian Arab Republic regarding the unauthorized movement of the 2 cylinders related to the chemical weapon incident that took place in Duma on 7th of April 2018 that were destroyed in an attack on a chemical weapons production facility. The Syrian Arab Republic must respond with urgency to the OPCW Technical Secretariat's request. With regard to the invitation extended by the OPCW Director General to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Syrian Arab Republic to an in-person meeting to identify ways to ensure that the Syrian Arab Republic complies in the shortest time possible with all of its obligations under the Convention, I note that while the OPCW Technical Secretariat was still awaiting a response from the Syrian Arab Republic on the latest version of the agenda submitted in December 2021, the Syrian Arab Republic suggested a preliminary meeting in Beirut. I have been advised that since then, communication between the focal points in charge of the preparations for the meeting between OPCW Director General and the Syrian Minister has been reinitiated by the OPCW Secretariat, and the Syrian Arab Republic has responded. Mr. President, as per previous briefings informing the Council, the OPCW fact-finding mission remains in the process of studying all available information related to allegations of the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian Arab Republic. I have been advised that the FFM continues to engage with the Syrian Arab Republic and other states parties to the Chemical Weapons Convention with regard to a number of incidents and preparing for upcoming deployments. Mr. President, I understand that the Investigation and Identification Team, or IIT, continues its investigations into incidents in which the FFM has determined that chemical weapons were used or likely used in the Syrian Arab Republic. The IIT will issue further reports in due course. With regard to the decision entitled Addressing the Possession and Use of Chemical Weapons by the Syrian Arab Republic, C25/Decision 9, adopted on 21st of April 2021, I have been informed that, unfortunately, the Syrian Arab Republic has not yet completed any of the measures stipulated in paragraph 5 of Decision EC 94/Decision 2. The OPCW Technical Secretariat will continue to engage with the Syrian Arab Republic with regard to their completion and will continue to report to the OPCW Executive Council as mandated. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, it cannot be repeated often enough, there is no justification for the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. There are no excuses for an inexcusable act. We must remain united and determined in preventing their use or the threat of their use. Those who have used chemical weapons must be identified and held to account. It is an obligation on all of us. It is my sincere hope that members of this Council will unite on this issue. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Izumi, for your briefing. We appreciate your persistent efforts and the work of the experts of the OPCW to provide independent, thoroughly researched, detailed information about the lack of serious progress towards the complete and verifiable elimination of its chemical weapons program. 9 years ago, in October 2013, the Syrian regime submitted to the OPCW its official plan for the systematic, total, and verified destruction of its chemical weapons program. Just weeks earlier, the regime had killed approximately 1,000 people in a horrific chemical attack on Ghouta. Faced with such carnage, the Syrian regime should have been shamed into changing its ways, into finally ridding the world of these barbaric weapons. But the Assad regime has no shame. And so, for years, rather than comply with its agreements and make the world and Syria safer, the regime has worked instead to pull the wool over the eyes of this council. The Assad regime, backed by Russia, continues to obfuscate and delay. Rather than fully declare the chemical weapon stockpiles it has repeatedly used, a violation of its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention it joined in 2013. The Assad regime also continues to prevent the deployment of the OPCW's Declaration Assessment Team to Syria, in clear violation of its obligations under UN Security Council Resolution 2118. The DAT has now proposed to address unresolved issues via correspondence. While the United States commends the OPCW for seeking a way forward, document review is no substitute for the DAT deploying to Syria. As such, we continue to call on those with influence over the Assad regime to encourage Damascus to immediately permit the DAT to return to Syria, resolve discrepancies, and help ensure the verified elimination of Syria's chemical weapons program, as it is bound to do under the Chemical Weapons Convention and UN Security Council Resolution 2118. In the absence of such positive action, however, we call on the Assad regime to provide a full response to the DAT's information request as expeditiously as possible. It is worth noting, however, that even when the Syrian regime has provided information, the regime's chemical weapons declarations have been riddled with gaps, inconsistencies, and unresolved discrepancies. Because of this, as we heard today, the Director General of the OPCW continues to assess that the Syrian declarations still cannot be considered accurate or complete. Syria's failure to provide complete, accurate information is extremely concerning. There is indeed a real possibility the Assad regime could, once again, use chemical weapons as it has done repeatedly against its own population. The U.S. government assesses that the Assad regime has used chemical weapons at least 50 times since Syria joined the convention in 2013. The OPCW UN Joint Investigative Mechanism and the OPCW's Investigation and Identification Team have independently confirmed the regime's use of chemical weapons on 8 occasions. The IIT's work is ongoing, and we look forward to its next report on the April 2018 attack on Douma. Mr. President, the Council is not duped by the Assad regime's obfuscation, aided by its ally Russia. OPCW states parties are not duped either and continue to support the OPCW's work on Syria. This has been repeatedly demonstrated, most recently during the 101st meeting of the OPCW Executive Council earlier this month, by the overwhelming support for the organization's budget that includes funding for the investigation and identification team. The regime's continued refusal to provide answers or information requested years ago by the DAT is an affront to the OPCW, this Council, and the international community. Its failure to declare and destroy its chemical weapons stores, meanwhile, is a threat to the Syrian people and the wider region. Taken together, these behaviors undermine our collective security and make the world less safe. The United States remains committed to holding the Syrian regime accountable for its use of chemical weapons and condemns, in the strongest possible terms, the use of chemical weapons anywhere, by anyone, under any circumstances. And just yesterday, we took action to hold 3 Syrian regime military officials involved in the August 2013 airstrikes on Ghouta accountable. These 3 officials and their immediate families are now ineligible for entry into the United States. The regime should end its intransigence and simply meet its obligations under both Security Council Resolution 2118 and the Chemical Weapons Convention as quickly as possible. Doing so would be a positive step toward enhancing our collective security and help to ensure that we never again witness the horrific scenes that we have seen in Syria over the last 9 years. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We take note of the briefing made by Madam Nakamitsu. Unfortunately, nothing fundamentally new was heard once again. Yet again, we received a copy and pasted report of the Director General of the OPCW. Moreover, this was issued on 30 September, nearly 1 month ago. As far as we understand, the next meeting of the Security Council may be held in early November, and in just a few days, a new report will be published. Then what is the point of today's discussion of what is known to be an outdated document? This approach discredits the discussion at the Security Council on the question of the implementation of Resolution 2118. The only thing that today's meeting will be remembered by is the latest refusal of Director General of the OPCW, Fernando Arias, to brief before the Council. It seems that in panic, he is afraid of responding to inconvenient questions put to the Technical Secretariat on remedying its politicized approach to the Syrian chemical dossier, as well as the manipulations in the drafting of the report of the fact-finding mission on the incident in Duma. Once again, we reiterate, the content of the reports of the Director General of the OPCW are imbalanced, replicate homogeneous allegations and accusations against the Syrians, and they are tailored to a single purpose: to create the impression that the dialogue between OPCW and Syrian Arab Republic is stalled exclusively due to the Syrian side's so-called unwillingness to cooperate. Our Syrian colleagues today will once again have to plug the gaps and describe those issues of their cooperation and aspects of cooperation with the Technical Secretariat which are not mentioned in the report, and we will refrain from talking in circles. Clearly, the schedule for the discussion of issues related to implementation of Security Council Resolution 2118 needs to be streamlined. And so long as Mr. Arias does not deign to, as befits a conscientious international civil servant of his rank, to speak before the Council, discussions of the Syrian chemical dossier each month are pointless, especially given that even at the OPCW headquarters in The Hague, this issue is discussed on a quarterly basis. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank High Representative Izumi Nakamitsu for her briefing. We once again meet in this chamber in a context where there seems to be little seems to have changed in the situation on the ground or in the relationship between the Syrian Arab Republic and the OPCW. It seems by now incontrovertible that the frequency of these meetings has to change. Holding monthly meetings when there is little or no relevant development on the ground does not seem efficient in terms of both time and resources. The OPCW's monthly report was just published today, a few minutes ago, and we almost had a meeting where we wouldn't even have a report to comment on. Unfortunately, due to the way that these debates are structured, having or not having a report, our interventions would have been the same. Mr. President, in the face of the absence of new developments in the Syrian chemical file, allow me to once again reaffirm our traditional position on the matter. Chemical weapons are utterly incompatible with international humanitarian law and therefore must have no place in the practices and doctrines of today's world. The use of such weapons violates international agreements and poses serious threats to international peace and security. Incidents must be addressed with transparency and be subject to thorough and impartial investigations in accordance with the CWC. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Brazil for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
I thank Madam Nakamitsu for her briefing. In 2013, the Syrian regime murdered thousands of civilians in the suburb of Damascus with weapons that are prohibited under international law. The reality of this heinous attack was not disputed, and the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2118. Mr. President, yet again, we deplore the lack of progress. The regime continues to obstruct the work of the OPCW. After having encountered 6 refusals from the regime, the Technical Secretariat had to renounce the deployment on the ground of the Declaration Assessment Team. Syria needs to shed light on all of its stockpiles. It needs to comply with its international obligations if it wishes to see a restoration of its rights and privileges. We urge Syria to respond in writing to the questions addressed by the Technical Secretariat on its initial declaration. We urge Syria to respond to the proposed agenda made for the Technical Secretariat nearly 1 year ago for the meeting to be scheduled in Beirut to be held between the two parties. France will closely monitor the conclusions of the 2 forthcoming reports of the IIT on attacks in Douma and Marea. Mr. President, despite the obstacles, the OPCW teams continue their investigative work with tenacity, independence, and professionalism. I wish to once again applaud them. The discreditation campaigns that are carried out against them are inadmissible. Here I wish to recall the following. Countering impunity and complete prohibition of chemical weapons use remain our priorities. This is the bedrock of the effectiveness, efficiency, and credibility of the prohibition regime. This is the meaning of our ongoing commitment and mobilization for the international partnership against impunity in the use of chemical weapons. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank High Representative Nakamitsu for her report. We note once again the scant progress made in shedding light on the use of chemical weapons in Syria. This lack of progress stands as a major obstacle for accountability regarding the use of these weapons in the Syrian conflict. 20 outstanding issues related to the initial Syrian declaration must yet be dealt with, and in spite of that fact, since February 2021, it has not been possible to undertake the 25th round of consultations between the Declaration Assessments Team and the Syrian authorities. No clarification has been received regarding the non-authorized movement of chlorine cylinders related to the incident in Douma in 2018. Information has also not been submitted to explain the chemical waste identified in the facilities in Baza in November 2018. Once again, we appeal to the Syrian government to submit the information requested and to fully cooperate in good faith with OPCW's teams. Mr. President, we recognize the efforts undertaken by the Secretariat to make progress on this file through the exchange of written information, and this in the face of obstacles it had faced in terms of making progress in any other way. However, this communication cannot stand as a substitute for direct consultations. Moreover, we take note of the inspections undertaken last September by the Secretariat in the Baza and Jamraya facilities of scientific studies and the research centre. We also take note of the most recent deployment of the fact-finding mission. Mexico will closely follow the publication of the corresponding reports. Moreover, we hope that the meeting between the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of Syria and the Director General of the OPCW will be held soon, and this on the understanding that there is already a proposed agenda and that civil servants from both sides have already been appointed as focal points. We take note of the fact that the preliminary meeting in Beirut will be of a technical nature, with the goal of honing details regarding the meeting in question. Mr. President, my delegation once again expresses its support for OPCW's Secretariat and its technical teams. In spite of many constraints, these parties continue to undertake their work professionally, independently and impartially, in stringent compliance with the highest international standards. Before concluding, we reiterate the fact that we condemn in the strongest terms the use of chemical weapons by any actor and under any circumstance. Thank you. I thank the representative of Mexico for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the High Representative for her briefing. Thank you, Izumi. We deeply regret that we are meeting once again with no progress visible on this file. This is despite the determination, flexibility and professionalism of the OPCW Technical Secretariat in seeking to work with Syria to resolve significant outstanding issues. President, we have listened to Syria at the OPCW and at this Council provide excuses for failing to adhere to its obligations. Unfortunately, Syria continues to place conditions on the OPCW's work and its engagement with the Technical Secretariat. It has blocked consultations with the Declaration Assessment Team for well over a year, contrary to Resolution 2118. Syria has failed to agree to the agenda and parameters for a meeting between DG Arias and Foreign Minister Mekdad, almost outstanding for over a year now. We thank the High Representative for her update on this, and we urge Syria to engage with all due speed to that meeting. Unfortunately, Syria continues to undermine the work and reputation of the OPCW and its investigation teams. Council has given the OPCW a clear mandate to resolve these issues with Syria, and the organisation should have the full backing of Council in carrying this out. President, Syria has repeatedly raised the concern of chemical weapons in the hands of non-state actors. We agree that this is an area that must be taken seriously. However, here again, Syria's words do not match its actions. The OPCW has received no cooperation from Syria in following up on these alleged cases. In fact, the cases Syria raises in its notes to the OPCW and the UN cannot be linked to any specific event in Syria, nor to the findings from OPCW investigations. In contrast, the OPCW has taken the issue of terrorist use of chemical weapons very seriously. The organisation has investigated where it possessed real information and issued reports, for example, on ISIL's use of chemical weapons in Syria. President, it is essential that Syria ends its prevarication and engages in a serious, urgent and meaningful way with the Technical Secretariat. It is only through genuine engagement that the OPCW will be able to provide the necessary assurance that Syria's chemical weapons programme is verifiably and definitively a thing of the past. Syria cannot be allowed to simply wait out the interest of the international community while it seeks to retain or reconstitute its chemical weapons capacities. The Council must actively uphold the international norm against the use of chemical weapons, including through unequivocally backing the OPCW in its mandated task. It is crucial that this item continues to be discussed regularly by the Council in order to signal to Syria that their lack of cooperation will not go unanswered. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Ireland for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Albania.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I would like to thank the High Representative for Disarmament, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, for her briefing. We are still faced with a situation that has hardly changed since the last meeting of the Council. No progress in discussions between OPCW and the Syrian government. No progress on the next inspection in Syria either. And there is no progress on the face-to-face meeting between the OPCW DG and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Syria. To date, following numerous OPCW reports, there is nothing that leads us to believe that Syria's chemical weapons program is being destroyed. And unfortunately, Syria's chemical weapons program continues to remain outside the control of the international community. Since February 2021, any attempts by the Secretariat to organize the 25th round of consultations between that and the Syrian National Authority have been unsuccessful. Communication is reduced only in exchange of note verbals. It is clear that Syria is unwilling to cooperate with OPCW and its teams in the Technical Secretariat, some of whose staff are being denied access in the country, despite paragraph 7 of the Security Council Resolution 2118, which obliges Syria to accept OPCW designated personnel by providing immediate and unhindered access necessary for the performance of their duties. We deeply regret Syria's deliberate lack of cooperation with OPCW. Mr. President, the latest OPCW monthly report clearly states that given the gaps, inconsistencies, and discrepancies identified, that remain unresolved, the Secretariat considers that the statements submitted by Syria cannot be considered accurate and complete in accordance with the Convention and Security Council Resolution 2118. We reiterate our full support for the objective, impartial, and professional work of the OPCW technical team. We welcome the 9th round of inspections of Barja and Jamaraya facilities conducted by the Secretariat from 11 to 18 September 2022 and look forward to the report of its inspections. In this context, we also commend the fact-finding mission for its ongoing activities on determining the use of chemical weapons in Syria, as well as for the Investigation Bureau and the Identification Team for its ongoing activities in identifying perpetrators of the use of chemical weapons in Syria. We look forward to their reports. We owe it to the victims to ensure that there is no impunity for chemical weapons attacks. Impunity for the use of chemical weapons must not and will not be tolerated. In conclusion, Mr. President, I would like to reiterate our firm position that the swift closure of investigation into the use of chemical weapons in Syria will enable the Security Council and the international community to support the Syrian people more effectively in their quest for a peaceful future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Albania for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Norway.
Thank you, President, and thank you to the High Representative Nakamitsu for your briefing on progress in the elimination of Syria's chemical weapons program. President, let me begin by commending the Secretariat for conducting the 9th round of inspections of the Barza and Jamaria Scientific Studies and Research Center facilities from the 11th to the 18th of September. Their twice-yearly inspections are important for fostering a spirit of positive engagement and dialogue between the Secretariat and the Syrian authorities, as well as for the collection of information to determine whether activities at the facilities were consistent with the obligations of Syria under the Chemical Weapons Convention. We hope this inspection will catalyze beneficial discussion on other topics for cooperation, including preparations for a meeting between Director General Arias and Minister Mektad. However, President, in order to fully implement Security Council Resolution 2118, there remains numerous roadblocks to overcome and issues that require immediate attention. The OPCW was requested further information about a reported attack on a former chemical weapons production facility, which apparently contained equipment of relevance to an ongoing OPCW investigation. The OPCW has also requested the declaration of all undeclared types and quantities of nerve agents produced and or weaponized as a certain former chemical weapons production facilities. It is vital that Syria complies with these requests and operates fully with the OPCW. Similarly, there remain 20 outstanding issues from Syria's initial declaration that are unresolved. We will continue to urge Syria to provide sufficient technical information and explanations to close these outstanding issues. Finally, it is critical that Syria completes the necessary measures to lift the suspension of its rights and privileges as a state party to the Chemical Weapons Convention. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Norway for this statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you. Mr. President, I thank Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu for her briefing today. In the context of today's meeting on the chemical file, the UAE reiterates its explicit rejection and condemnation of the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. Their use constitutes a flagrant violation of both the provisions of the Chemical Weapons Convention and international law. The UAE also reiterates the importance of continuing a constructive and constant dialogue between the OPCW and the Syrian authorities to resolve pending issues. We believe that communicating solely through written correspondence will not achieve this purpose. We stress the need to work on a sustainable solution to move forward on this file. Therefore, we look forward to the upcoming meeting between the Syrian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Director General of the OPCW, and we hope that this meeting is productive. Mr. President, it is unfortunate that the latest report did not contain any new developments that warrant convening this meeting. Our current positions have not changed and are clear to everyone. They are also documented in our statements and in the meeting records of the open briefings. In this regard, I would like to remind my colleagues of the importance of using the time and resources of this body wisely. This means that our meetings have to be effective, both in frequency and content. We all share the responsibility in evaluating our work on this file. Therefore, we should reconsider the number of meetings held by the Council regarding the chemical weapons track. And when there are developments that require convening a meeting, the UAE will be supportive of those requests. The chemical weapons track is an important file, and achieving any progress could contribute, along with other factors, to paving the way for an end to the Syrian crisis. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for the statement and now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and thank you to the High Representative. There may be one thing that I can agree with my Russian colleague on, that sadly we heard today no significant new developments in the briefing from the UN. We again heard instead a long list of areas where the Syrian regime continues to refuse to provide adequate information to the OPCW or to complete basic actions in accordance with its international obligations. But this does not mean we should simply turn a blind eye and give the Syrian regime a free pass. Syria's refusal to cooperate with the OPCW to address the outstanding issues with its Chemical Weapons Convention declaration is inexcusable. As we've said many times, the 20 outstanding issues are not academic. They include the whereabouts of several hundred tons of chemical warfare agents, whose destruction still cannot be verified. And the history is not in doubt, with at least 8 chemical weapon attacks already independently attributed to the Assad regime against its own people. Syria and Russia have long used distraction and disinformation in an attempt to deflect attention from appalling war crimes committed by the Assad regime. But despite this, 2 things are clear. First, Syria's non-compliance with its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention poses a genuine and ongoing threat to international peace and security. And second, there must be accountability for the Assad regime's historic use of chemical weapons. This Council must continue to address these issues despite Syrian and Russian efforts to obstruct progress. We cannot send the signal that we tolerate the use of chemical weapons, and we cannot allow impunity. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank High Representative Nakamitsu for her briefing. To begin with, I wish to reiterate that China consistently opposes the use of chemical weapons by any country, organization, or individual under any circumstances. Dialogue and consultation are the only way to resolve the Syrian chemical weapons issue. We have taken note of the consultations between the Syrian government and the Technical Secretariat through exchange of correspondence on the declaration assessment. We call on the TS to fully respect the concerns of the Syrian party regarding the visa issue and take steps to remove the obstacles to the 25th round of technical consultations. The OPCW's investigation and holding accountable of those responsible for the alleged use of chemical weapons should be strictly within the framework of the Chemical Weapons Convention, compliant with procedural requirements with reliable evidence and credible conclusions. The in conclusion, China reiterates that, like Russian Federation and Brazil, that the Council should reduce the frequency of its consideration of the Syrian issues or consider combining the various Syrian issues for a joint review. This will not only help deal with the Syrian issues from an integrated perspective, but also improve the efficiency of the Council. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for this statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank Under Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, for the update. We note the consistent lack of progress on this track of discussions on Syria in the Council. India attaches high importance to the Chemical Weapons Convention and stands for its full, effective and non-discriminatory implementation. India is against the use of chemical weapons by anybody, anywhere, at any time and under any circumstances. India has consistently maintained that any investigation into the use of chemical weapons must be impartial, credible and objective. We have repeatedly cautioned against the possibility of terrorist entities and individuals gaining access to chemical weapons, including in the region. Therefore, any allegation of use of chemical weapons needs to be dealt with utmost attention. We have noted the concerns expressed by OPCW Technical Secretariat with regard to Syria's fulfillment of its obligations under Chemical Weapons Convention, and we hope that it will take right steps to address those concerns. We believe that sustained engagement between Syria and the OPCW Technical Secretariat is essential to resolving all outstanding issues. To conclude, India continues to believe that progress in other tracks would also help in facilitating overall political peace process in Syria as advocated in Security Council Resolution 2254. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India for the statement, and I will now deliver a statement in my capacity as the representative of Gabon.
Colleagues, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the A3, comprising Kenya, Ghana, and my country, Gabon. We thank High Representative of Disarmament Affairs, Mrs. Izumi Nakamitsu, for her briefing and welcome the participation in this meeting of the representative of Syria, Iran, and Turkey. We take note of the 108th report of the OPCW, highlighting the unchanged situation since the last briefing that has become characteristic of the Syrian chemical weapon file in recent time. As we acknowledge the submission of the 106th monthly report by the Syrian national authorities on the country's chemical weapons program, we remain concerned that there has not been any significant progress in the attempts to fully address the issue in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention. We also welcome the conduct of the 9th round of inspection of the Barza and Jamraya facilities of the Scientific Study and Research Center from 11 to 18 September 2022 and look forward to the release of the report on the outcome of the inspections. The A3 reiterates its strong support for the Resolution 2118 of this Council and calls for concerted global efforts and expedite action on verifiable destruction of Syria's chemical weapon to give full meaning to the resolution and the Chemical Weapon Convention. We therefore call on the Syrian national authorities to cooperate constructively with the Secretariat of the OPCW to help facilitate the conclusive resolution of all outstanding issues, including the organization of the 25th round of consultation with DAT. In this regard, we welcome the meeting proposed by the Syrian national authorities to be held in Beirut with the OPCW and call on the two sides to reconcile their position on the agenda for the suggested meeting, taking into account the OPCW's letter dated 20th December 2021 on the subject. It is our firm belief that early convening of such a high-level in-person meeting between the Minister of Foreign Affairs an expatriate of the Syrian Arab Republic and the Director General of OPCW, will give the needed impetus to the process and help revive efforts towards the final resolution of the outstanding issues. Colleagues, as we noted in our previous statement, without a definite closure of the matter by the OPCW, the lingering danger of the production and possible use of chemical weapons in Syria or elsewhere cannot be completely ruled out. There is no gainsaying that the expeditious resolution of this investigation will also allow us the opportunity to focus our time and limited resources on the other existing challenges facing the Syrian people. In concluding, the A3 collectively reiterates its position against the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. We also remain committed to the established norm against the use of chemical weapons and support all efforts to raid their production, storage, or use. I thank you for your attention.
I now resume my function as the President of the Security Council, and I give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. مرة أخرى.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, the Security Council is examining this issue in the absence of any development or event which requires this debate to take place. All it is an opportunity for some known countries, with the US at the forefront, to repeat accusatory rhetoric targeting Syria. This meeting is as such a waste of time and resources, which should have been used better. Mr. President, Syria's cooperation with the OPCW is an issue which should be recognized. Since its accession to the Convention voluntarily in 2013, Syria has voluntarily cooperated with the organization. It has, as proof of this, totally destroyed its stockpiles of chemical weapons and facilities allowing their production. It did all that in a record time. Everyone is perfectly well aware that states such as the United States, France, and the United Kingdom deliberately ignore that truth for political reasons, which are destructive. These countries have done what they've done since 2011 to destabilize Syria and upset its security and undermine the country. They've also had recourse to terrorist groups and launched accusations regarding chemical weapons facilities. Their accusations have no foundation, legal or otherwise. All of their efforts are part of the propaganda from an enemy launched as part of a campaign against my country. What encourages Syria to uphold the convention should also encourage countries who themselves are violating the convention first and foremost. What encourages Syria should encourage them to uphold the convention, and they should all stop countries from being able to put chemical or toxic weapons into the hands of dangerous organizations. These countries should be held accountable for crimes perpetrated against Syrians. They should also be held accountable for their use of chemical weapons or the manufacture thereof. The many accounts presented by Syria, much such testimony that has not been properly verified or taken account of, supports all of my theses. We should stop being talked down to about the fact that we need to respect the convention. Instead of talking down to us, they should have rapidly respected their commitments to the convention. Western partners or other parties have prevaricated for years, and rather than reducing their chemical weapons arsenal. And they've put forward fallacious arguments for not doing that. Mr. President, some people on this council say that the OPCW's teams are doing their work professionally and impartially. But the question that comes to my mind is, how is that the case? The fact-finding mission, when it receives samples of suspicious sources or of dubious provenance, does that mean that they're working provisionally according to the terms of the convention? The adoption of working methods that are discriminatory in nature, that suit parties calling for the inquiry, is that an impartial and professional way of working? Reports submitted by these same teams to serve the political agendas of certain countries, also to mask a military aggression perpetrated by 3 member countries of this council against my country, is that an indication of credible work? Delays when it comes to the submission of reports into incidents have been noted. And in contrast, there has been quick submission of reports regarding other incidents. There's that discrepancy in terms of timeframes for submission of reports. Is that impartial and professional in terms of ways of working? I hope that you are going to think in greater depth about these issues. Mr. President, Syria reiterates the fact it is satisfied at the meeting of the DAT. It's been said, well, we've said that there were no conditions for this round, but the technical secretariat nevertheless needs to recognize Syria's good faith that has not stopped any civil servant or any team from accessing its territory, and has not done that for 9 years. We please ask that the important work of the DAT not be hindered. No team must be held hostage as a result of because of the fact that we won't allow solely one expert to access our territory. That expert can be easily replaced. We're not holding any work hostage. All issues being examined by this team are, any issues within their remit are being examined by Syria and the Technical Secretariat jointly. There's no final conclusion to this matter as things stand. So, we reject the insistence of certain countries on ignoring the clarifications we provided, and we reject the fact that they're so hasty to accuse Syria using incorrect, unverified information. Mr. President, as regards the high-level meeting between the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates and the Director General of the OPCW, Syria reaffirms its commitment to seeing this meeting held as soon as possible and in line with an agenda which will be agreed to by both parties. Such a meeting will serve to examine and resolve the questions which have yet to be resolved between the parties. Here I would indicate that the Technical Secretariat has finally, it did so on the 3rd of October, finally responded to our proposal regarding the holding of an organizational meeting between the focal points of the two parties in Beirut to prepare this high-level meeting. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Syrian Arab Republic reiterates its position on the illegal nature of the creation of what is called the IIT, the Investigation and Identification Team. The convention did not charge the organization's technical secretariat with undertaking such inquiries regarding responsibility for the use of chemical weapons. As a result, this IIT team has obtained an illegal mandate, and that bears witness to an imbalance in the implementation of the convention and points to the remit being extended, and that does wrong and does an injustice to a state party to the convention. The creation of the IIT team pursuant to a resolution that was imposed by a vote and with the agreement of very few states parties to the convention contradicts consensus by which the organization generally works. And this has meant that this team has a responsibility that is not set forth in the convention, and that means that a remit has clearly been surpassed and that the convention's provisions have clearly been violated. We also take note of the fact that the voting is not a means to simply circumvent the text of a convention. My delegation once again reiterates its total repudiation and Syria's total refusal to recognize this team and its working methods. They are incorrect and are not professional, and the way the team works will ultimately lead to false conclusions which instead should be properly founded. The Syrian Arab Republic, to conclude, Mr. President, totally condemns the use of chemical weapons, whoever the perpetrator or whatever the circumstances. Syria, I reiterate once again, does not wish to hinder the organization's work. On the contrary, we wish to prevent the organization's team from working or acting in a way which runs counter to the convention. And we wish to do so in order to guarantee the professionalism, impartiality, and credibility of the organization. Syria has noted that there are certain countries which, in this organization, which wish to instrumentalize for the purposes of goals that go against Syria and for the purposes of reaching harmful objectives, wish to instrumentalize the work of this organization, and they wish to politicize this file to mask practices of certain terrorist groups perpetrated by them against the Syrian Arab Republic. If this destructive behavior is not changed, if their destructive agenda towards my country is not changed, we will not be able to examine this file and to conclude it professionally and impartially. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Mr. President, the Islamic Republic of Iran once again condemned in the strongest possible terms the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. We reiterate our call that the Chemical Weapon Convention must be implemented fully, effectively, and without discrimination. We believe that politicizing the Convention's application and using the OPCW for political purpose endanger about the legitimacy of the organization and the convention. The OPCW must be able to carry out its responsibilities in an impartial, professional, and objective manner. Furthermore, in order to establish facts and reach evidence-based conclusion, any investigations into the use of chemical weapons must be impartial, professional, credible, and objective, and must strictly adhere to the provision and procedure outlined in the Convention. We acknowledge the critical importance of the efforts by the Syrian Arab Republic to uphold its Convention obligations. We urge the OPCW and Syrian Arab Republic to maintain their contact and interaction. The high-level meeting between Syria's Foreign Minister and the Director General of the OPCW is currently being arranged. This meeting, which is expected to take place, has the potential to pave the way for the parties to resolve outstanding issues. In this regard, the Syrian National Authority proposed to the Technical Secretariat that the two parties hold a coordination meeting in Beirut to agree on the agenda for the high-level meeting, which has been responded to by the Technical Secretariat on 3rd of October. We also commend the Syrian Arab Republic for submitting the 107th monthly report to the Director General of the OPCW on October 15th, detailing activities on its territory related to the destruction of chemical weapons and their production facilities. In the line with its constructive cooperation, the Syrian Arab Republic has also facilitated a visit of the Technical Secretariat of the OPCW to Syria to conduct the 9th inspection tour of the Center for Scientific Studies and Research. Mr. President, while the Syrian Arab Republic has met the requirements of the Convention and continues to cooperate constructively with the OPCW, handling this file in a political and double-standard manner will only divert discussions away from their technical nature. Therefore, we reiterate once again our call on the Security Council to utilize its meeting on Syria, dedicating one monthly meeting of the Council to the reputation of the position and unfounded allegation against the Syrian government is not conducive to the Security Council efficiency. We support the discussions of this matter in its own technical track in the OPCW in order to foster positive dialogue between Syria and the OPCW and resolve the open issues. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank High Representative Nakamitsu for her briefing. We commend the independence, professionalism, and impartiality of the OPCW Technical Secretariat. We appreciate the OPCW Director General's efforts to establish a direct line of contact in order to resolve outstanding issues. As reported yet again by the OPCW, the gaps, discrepancies, and inconsistencies in the Chemical Weapons Declaration of Assad regime continue, and the OPCW still cannot consider that declaration as accurate and complete. The regime is obstructing the work of the investigation and identification team by not issuing visas. Furthermore, the OPCW Secretariat is still waiting for responses to its inquiries sent to the Syrian regime in October 2020 and July 2021 regarding its chemical weapons production facilities and the chlorine cylinders used in the attack in Douma in 2018. We call on the Syrian regime to fully cooperate with the OPCW Technical Secretariat and provide necessary information, as it is obligated under the Chemical Weapons Convention. Mr. President, the investigations by the Fact-Finding Mission, FFM, and the IIT are important to establish the truth about chemical weapons use in Syria. Independent scientific investigations have established that the Assad regime is responsible for resorting to chemical weapons against its own population on multiple occasions. We are looking forward to the completion of the ongoing investigations, especially the next IIT report on Duma attack of 2018. Mr. President, let me reiterate that the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances is a grave violation of international law. It is our collective responsibility to ensure accountability for the chemical weapons use in Syria. A genuine political reconciliation in this country would only be possible through justice and accountability. It is high time that the members of this Council left their political differences behind and took steps to enforce the Council's own resolution, namely Resolution 2118 of 2013. Ending impunity is imperative, also to honor the hundreds of innocent lives lost due to the chemical weapons attacks during the conflict in Syria. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey for his statement. Dear colleagues, there are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned. Oh, hello.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.